I had some conversation with some different leaders, and they were talking about the Truman property, and some things started developing. And then the next day or two, somebody else came through and talked to me about the Truman property. We have 160 acres debt-free right there on the highway, ready to do something that God gave us sovereignly as a gift. I probably had 5 important conversations about the Truman property in 5 years. And I've had 10 important conversations in the last 20 days. The dominoes are going down. Something is happening with the Truman property related to even touching the nation of Israel, and what's happening in the end times is I am really paying attention. I've been thinking a lot about the prophetic history, a lot about Chris Reed's word, that we're approaching that season for a 40-year transitional period, moving out of the wilderness to the promised land, which means that season where some of the promises, and we've been given glorious promises, some of them will come into greater open fulfillment and manifestation.
Greetings, Mike Bickle here in Kansas City at the International House of Prayer. I want to give a greeting with a team of friends and leaders here around the room. I'm going to take just a real short moment. We're asking the Lord to confirm, and some of it's confirmed, some of it's just thinking outside the box, but the Lord will make it clear. We have a piece of property of 160 acres, and it's right on the major interstate, literally on Interstate 49. And this was Harry S. Truman's former property. He lived on this property. And in 1983, near 40 years ago, Bob Jones prophesied to me when I met him, God was going to put us on Harry S. Truman's property one day as a sign and a wonder and a prophetic declaration of God's saving purposes for Israel. In a miraculous way, this property was given to us debt-free as a free gift, And we received it 50 years to the day, which is a remarkable, that Harry S. Truman sold his property to a Jewish family called the Goldbergs, and the Goldbergs sold it to IHOP, and it closed on the very same day, January 27, 1958. Goldbergs to IHOP, January 27, 2008, 50 years to the day. This Jubilee property, we have it debt-free, and this Jubilee property is returning to its rightful owner, the intercession movement for Israel, because Truman was a political intercessor for Israel, though I don't know if he knew it, and we are dedicated to this property for spiritual intercession for Israel, to see 100 million intercessors raised up across the earth, working with thousands of ministries to cry out for the salvation of Israel and for the glory of God to fill the earth. So on this piece of property, we're thinking outside the box. We're imagining. We've looked at some other properties that are quite beautiful, aesthetically beautiful and elaborate, and they've kind of given us a little paradigm shift of what could happen on this property. And so the first thing, none of this is actual, okay? Meaning it may be all different. As we progress, we will have smart guys, engineers, architects that will say, no, you can't do it this way. You got to do it that way. So understand, I don't really know what I'm talking about when I lay it out here, because it's all filled with trees. Ultimately, one day, we want to see what we call the United Nations of Prayer. And the United Nations of Prayer, IHOP will be a part of this facility. I'm just making up this number. It'd be like 1 million square feet, a real big facility with prayer rooms and facilities for all kinds of prayer ministries from around the nations, United Nations of Prayer. Thinking of naming this the Truman Legacy Park. And Truman's legacy was intercession for Israel politically. Truman's legacy, he started the United Nations. So the United Nations of Prayer, this is probably the end of the story. This is maybe 10 years from now. I imagine that in front of this, we have this big circle of flags like at the United Nations. And it's like I don't know the number, but a circle, 100 flags on 20-foot poles. And right in the center is a 50-foot pole with a flag twice as big as the others of Israel. And we got 150,000 people every morning and evening coming out this highway, seeing that Israel flag, the United Nations, that's chief among the nations, with fountains in here, with a projected United Nations of Prayer here, with the whole IHOP ministry fitting in a portion of this in terms of our prayer ministry. I mean, lots of spatial ground with big walkways and parks and all kinds of park things over here, recreation for family, for children. This is what really excites me here. This is a walkway that's got an overhead, and maybe the overhead is 15 feet. It's a big walkway. Maybe it's 100 or 200 yards this way at the back of the land, and 100 or 200 yards this way. I don't really know, but lots of yards. Like one of them would be the Holocaust exhibition that we connect with Israel, and we say, hey, can we get some of your footage? So we have these video screens here with ear things with all different languages, 8 or 10 video presentations under this one, and we'll drive everybody to you, but let us use your stuff here, because this Truman Legacy Park, the Holocaust. The next one, maybe the history of Israel itself. There could be 10 different video presentations, all different languages. One of them, like in Israel, is the Truman Memorial. Well, there's about 15 or 20 different things to do. It's this walkway. So we got this park, and this beautiful park with these fountains, these open broad walks and open spaces, picnic places. The Israel part here, we talk to universities, high schools, Bible schools, and say, hey, come and take a tour of this. We have all kinds of prayer centers and prayer walks. And I'm thinking of somewhere, I'm sure it won't be there, but like a wailing wall where it's like 50 feet long, 20 feet high, big rocks. And right in the middle of it is a screen 10 feet by 10 feet showing a live feed of the Wailing Wall of Jerusalem. I mean, live right there. And then we connect that to other prayer rooms across the earth. All these different exhibitions about Israel. We're training them. We have an Aliyah Center where people learn about Aliyah, not just Jews to return, but Gentiles to support them, showing the biblical and the many implications of that. Anyway, there's 25 different things we could do there. We wouldn't have enough space for all of them. A group of people will decide which or which. I don't care. I just want to see the possibility of Israel, a prophetic statement to Israel being declared across the earth, a prophetic statement of God's purposes for the salvation of Israel. I see over here a place maybe where we have room for 1,000 tents with some facilities and water and stuff like, where every year we have a Feast of Tabernacles where they literally stay in the tents for the 7 days. And we get top teachers from Israel. And our Bible school, the IHOP University, is about a half a mile away. It's 100,000 square feet. We have all kinds of rooms and media capacities. So we could have seminars in here. We'll have a Feast of Tabernacle. The Lord spoke to us 40 years ago in May 1983, something about the Truman property and a number of things that would happen on it. And so this May 14th, 2022, when we're at Arrowhead, is like the first day of our 40 years since that the Lord spoke back in May 1983. We went on a 21-day fast when the Lord spoke about many of these things. It's the first day of our 40th year. I tell some of the folks, some of you say, I'm not into the Israel thing. Well, it's an Israel mandate. It's God's thing. God is zealous for Israel. It's a biblical mandate.
This is what I'm saying. There is a convergence, I believe, with the connection to the Jew first and revival happening in America. That's what we prayed. I present it to you, brothers and sisters. That's what's burning in my heart. I feel that something's moving, and I just feel like I'm just totally joined with you. And Dean in Galilee, amen. That's what's on my heart.
100 million intercessors for Israel. What a wonderful vision. But we need to equip those intercessors. We need to equip them with a biblical education that's prophetic, it's apostolic, that's Christ-centered, and it will actually enable and empower those intercessors in the Spirit of God to pray effectively, to pray in accordance to righteousness, so as to see this kingdom restored to Israel. The Truman land with the Yagala Loan Center is representing a pioneer in the land that we're talking about creating a memorial to, and that is the Truman Legacy Park. They provide sure locations so that we can have the intercession, have a place to go forth from in Israel and also in America. I believe if we've got education at the core of what we're talking about with our prayer, our intercession, and our worship, this will launch out a people who will want to get their hands dirty. They'll be a part of Aliyah. They'll be a part of absorbing the people in the land, comforting and loving and blessing Israel. They'll be a part of Jews and Christians coming together and serving the needy in the land of Israel. What's more, going out into the nations. I believe we have components that are working towards that, and really the beginning of components that will attract so many other organizations as we demonstrate a love for one another, and we are inclusive for the glory of his name.
It's really the bigger storyline. It's the composite story, the significance of the big storyline. What is really happening in this time, in this hour, right now? What am I saying to you right now in this time when nations are shaking more and more and there's upheaval and turmoil? The Lord is saying, I'm with you. I'm going to show you I will be true to my words to you. I'm going to show you what I've been zealous about all of these years. The Lord spoke in a real strong way. I'm not going to go to the details now. He said, pray to raise up 100 million intercessors for Israel. And that's something we've been saying for 25, 30 years. I don't know, 100 million intercessors for Israel. Not that we would do it, but we will be involved in it. We will be cheerleaders for it, catalytic in it. We'll be committed to it. And 100 million Gentile intercessors for Israel, like what? But the Lord made it very clear.